Alright, so as you can see, the engine light is flashing. The engine is idling very rough. If you're sitting in this vehicle, you can feel some jerking and vibration while it's parked. This engine has been running since this clock had said 6:11 p.m. Right now it's December 26th, 2018. The engine was running fine, pretty smooth. I'd let it sit for about an hour idle while I was just watching YouTube videos. I had spent a good about 5 hours recharging the battery on just 3 amps because it was low enough it wouldn't even start the vehicle. This vehicle had been sitting for a while I was driving another vehicle. This is my 2003 Ford Escape XLT 3-liter V6, and anyway, like, this thing had been sitting for months without being started, and I just wanted to kind of start it back up so I can do an engine diagnostic, and then, run the defroster and make sure, this thing's maintained. By the way, the heat's really good in here. I got it, well, the temperature's up, but the fan is like at a low setting, and it's roasty warm in here. And then the thermostat's got the temperature's right where it should be, and that's normal running operation. It was about 50 degrees Fahrenheit outside. It's probably dropped down to maybe 40 or whatever, 40 degrees, so just a little bit above freezing. Like I said, it's the day after Christmas, 2018. Now that engine light went off, and then I don't feel the vibration quite as bad. It might start back up. I feel the vibration a little bit more. You can see how the engine is idling pretty low. So I'm going to turn down this defroster fan a little bit. So anyway, for about 20 minutes, I had I set the engine RPM up to about 2,000. So it's running very smooth now. Like no vibrations. This thing right now at 2,000 RPM is very, very smooth. Sounds good, feels good, everything's all great, right? Well, something's wrong with this vehicle, and I got the FIXD, the FIXD OBD engine diagnostic little device, which you might be able to see. Yeah, I'm wearing Crocs. It's a little white item down there. Here it is. About a $60 item. And I think I got it on like Black Friday sale or whatever for like, it was less than $60. Anyway, so I used a battery charger, a pretty decently good Schumacher, to charge this battery at about 3 amps for, a few hours, and just because it's set for a while. You got your, keep in mind, you got your little security system that operates your car alarm, that's pulling on the battery, pulling energy from the battery all the time. And it's set for a few months without being started, and the battery did not completely die, because if you open up the vehicle, then the interior lights come on, and they seem decently bright, but it just was not enough power to start the vehicle. So I let it sit on the battery charger, charged it enough to start up the vehicle. Of course, it was a full charge. And then I just let the engine run, just to cycle some fuel through the vehicle, and to make sure I can run the defroster, because you gotta use some of these parts whenever they got fluids and stuff in there, so that keeps your seals and all that stuff good. So it's running very smooth now, but as you see whenever I started this video, just a little over 4 minutes ago, that it was idling rough, and the engine light, the check engine light, was flashing off and on. Now the check engine light was on earlier today whenever I started this vehicle. Then I used this little app with this OnBoard Diagnostic engine code reader, the FIXD, the fixed. There we go. There's the engine light again. I used it to check what was wrong with the vehicle, and, you know, P300 series codes, you know, like cylinder misfire, which that could be, you know, spark plugs. It could be, you know, maybe fuel injectors. It could be some things, right? But to let you know how sensitive this stuff is, you could take a brand new car off the assembly line at a manufacturer and just loosen up a spark plug wire, and then it will cause the engine computer to send out a P300 series engine code, you know. So it's like, you know, so if it's like cylinder number 1, then it'd be P301, or if it's cylinder number 3, it'd be P303 is the engine code, for example. And then you put the spark plug back on, and then, you know, it won't put out that code anymore. You know, when I used to work at an auto parts store back in 2015, there was actually a customer that come in, wanted us to do a diagnostic on his vehicle, and because he'd been having a little bit of trouble, and then it did one of those P300 series engine codes from the OnBoard Diagnostic, you know, the engine computer that's built into every car these days since like the 1980s. And definitely on through the 1990s. Well, I don't know if I'd say the 1980s. Like, basically, yeah, well, yeah. OBD version 2 lasted from, like, 1996, I think, until 2011. So this vehicle I'm in right now, being a 2003, was very much in the time period of OBD version 2, which is pretty good. I mean, it tells you quite a bit of stuff. And it's pretty helpful. Well, anyway, this customer had a pickup truck, and he came into this auto parts store. We did a diagnostic, you know, for free, and found a P300 series code. And I theorized, I was guessing, I was like, you got any spark plugs loose or anything like that? Because that's one of the many things that can cause it. It just simply means the cylinder is not firing properly. And then he checked all his spark plug wires and found out one of them was off, like it had vibrated itself loose. So this V8 engine in his pickup truck was only running on 7 cylinders at that time. So then he put that, you know, spark plug wire back onto the spark plug of his vehicle, made sure it was secure good, and we ran another diagnostic, and it did not give that code again. So that's what I learned there, you know, just working at an auto parts store, you know, not actually being a mechanic. We take this vehicle to Heritage Ford in Corydon, Indiana, in the spring of and maybe early summer of 2017, and they can't seem to find out what's wrong with it. They theorized this instrument panel was going bad, so they replaced it. You know, they're thinking, well, if your gauges are put back on the light. They think, well, if your gauges are sweeping over to the extreme, as if your RPM's going all the way up to 8,000, and then speedometer go up to 120 mile an hour while you're driving 30 through like a little alleyway or something like that, or like you're on a little road in town, and or you're driving on a highway and the speed limit's 55 mile an hour, but you're accelerating past 40 mile an hour to get up to speed, and then your engine gauges sweep like that all the way up to 120 degrees, or not 120 degrees, I'm sorry, 120 mile an hour, and then your RPM goes up to 8,000, and then your temperature gauge goes all the way up to hot, and then your fuel gauge goes all the way to empty. All of a sudden for a couple seconds, and then everything goes back to zero. So the engine goes cold, the RPM goes to zero, the mile an hour goes down to zero, and the fuel gauge goes all the way back up to full. Yeah, and, and then it does that, and then everything resets and it goes back to normal, and it does that, especially when the little battery light starts flickering, which it is not doing now. The battery is not low. Like I said, I did a completely full charge, a nice slower charge of 3 amps, let it set for several hours. I'm not having any battery trouble out of this thing today. But anyway, Heritage Ford dealership, a Ford dealership, thought, oh, well, the instrument panel must be going bad, They like, come on, just get you a $50 OBD engine code reader, plug it into the OBD port, and let it read the codes and see what the engine computer tells you, because these vehicles are sensitive. Maybe you haven't noticed, but you could take your gas cap off of your vehicle, just like you're going to fill it up with gas while it's running, and it'll throw a code, an evap system code. Like, these vehicles are so sensitive to things like that. And I mean, like, yeah, and these mechanics at this dealership were horseplaying and slackers, so far as what we were told by management there. They had to fire some of them. It's just stupid, You talk to a supervisor, find out what's going on, and they just, yeah, it's just stupid. They had to fire some people there, and they just weren't doing their job right. And, I understand, I believe it. Back in 2016, me and a friend of mine went to his company picnic, and, and this was at, it was at Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom in Louisville, Kentucky. And then, afterward, we went to Wick's Pizza in, I think, the Highlands, in the East End, or toward the eastern part of Louisville, Kentucky, toward the East End. Yeah, I like that part of town. You got some beautiful scenery there, and it's not bad. And like Phoenix Hill Tavern, or maybe I think they changed their name, was there, but around Bardstown Road, it's kind of a quaint part of Louisville. Well, anyway, we went to Wick's Pizza there. As soon as we walked in the door of that place, we heard these people, working in the kitchen, just cussing, like loud. We heard them all the way up to the front of the building, and the kitchen's in the back of the building where they cook the pizza. And, they were just horseplaying, about 5 or so minutes after we ordered our pizza. We saw, them horseplaying, through that window thing, and they were, like, throwing rolls of paper towel at each other. When you go in the bathroom, like, an entire fresh roll of toilet paper, the big industrial ones for, like, business bathrooms, are just sitting in the toilet, and then you look at, after you wash your hands, you're looking at the paper towel dispenser, and it says employees must wash their hands before returning to work. And then somebody took a Sharpie marker and wrote instructions for Sal, S-A-L, the name of a person, as in, like, Sal does not wash his hands after he gets done using the bathroom. It was a bad experience. I gave him a 50-cent tip just because I felt bad for them. Those workers there put their manager in a situation where he had to, basically he was embarrassed and he apologized. They burnt our pizza there because they were horseplaying. They were not watching the oven. And even though they were horseplaying and cussing, before we even ordered our pizza, before we even sat down at the table to order our pizza, half an hour after we ordered our pizza, the manager says, well, there was some commotion you may have heard in there because the pizza got burnt. No, the commotion was not because of the pizza being burned. The commotion happened before we even, like, sat down to order the pizza, because it happened as soon as we were coming in there. He's got slackers working there. And then, they burn our pizza. Then a half an hour later, they bring out another one, and he offered to discount our pizza. I gave him a 50-cent tip. because the waitress was not at fault for, you know, I just felt bad, you know. Really, and next time it happens, I will go back there and be R. Lee Ermey, you know, the famous gunnery sergeant on those slackers. You know, because where I work at, you know, if I don't know the molecular structure of the plastic of one of these consumer electronics products, then I get grilled by the customer and they gripe. And how many times these customers say, well, if you don't know, then what do I pay you for if you don't know this stuff? I remember in the fall of 2016, man, I got chewed up and shit out by a customer in my department because I didn't know much about the Belk and Wemo products. And he's, you know, a customer comes in, he's an older guy, he says, well, I want something that, you know, she can, like, you know, time her porch light and, like, it come on a timer. Oh, here's that battery light. It was just flickering. I don't know if you can see it, but I can. Let's see if we can adjust it. You might be able to see the battery light. It's very, very faint. It's like a flickering. You barely see it. It's in the middle of the camera's view. So anyway, you know, and then I didn't really have any training on this Belk and Wemo product, and, you know, so I just read the box and tried to find, I assumed the customer knew something about what he was trying to achieve, so I was reading things on the box and, you know, seeing if it, there we go, you saw that flashing light right there, there you go, in the middle of the camera, so I figured, this is in the fall of 2016, this is about 2 years ago, and I figured the customer would have a clue about what they're trying to achieve. So I was reading things on the box to the customer and, you know, trying to find the right product for the customer because I was still fairly new to my department. And this customer just just ate me up and shit me out, you know, chewed me up and shit me out. He's like, oh no, well, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm like, hey, come on, buddy, I'm just giving you information, trying to empower you, and you're getting mad because I cannot seem to psychically guess what's in your mind, and that's the crap I deal with, you know. I lost a Netgear Orbi sale because I was already helping out my customer, you know, and told him what the product will and won't do, diagnosed his problem, recommended a solution, took, you know, care of him. I was waiting for the customer to buy it, and then another coworker brings a customer over to me for a second opinion. You know, this employee told the customer, this other customer, that a Ethernet splitter will not do what this customer wants it to do because they're not designed that way. And then, you know, I just spent about 10 seconds saying, no, what you need is this product right over here, blah, blah, blah. Ethernet splitter's not going to work for you. And the customer didn't want to hear it. They kept thinking in their head that an Ethernet splitter is what they want to do. And I'm on top of my game now. Like, I mean, I am, dude. Like, you know, now a customer gets 30% into explaining something, and I already know, I mean, sometimes I know enough to finish their sentence for them. Like, that's for them, right? You know, finish what, you know, I can finish their sentence of what they're trying to say. I've gotten that proficient at my job. And, yeah, you know, because I get the feedback from customers on what will and won't work. And, you know, I've got a lot more experience in my job. I've been doing my department for 2.5 years now, you know, and I deal with more complicated stuff like diagnosing networking problems and stuff, you know, for like simple home networking, you know, your Wi-Fi or your devices or whatever, and I recommend solutions for them. I don't just sell a product. You know, people tell me that I'm the best Wi-Fi router salesman of any retail store within 30 miles of Clarksville, Indiana. You know, and we got guys that work for computer businesses. Now, these are independent people, and, you know, they come in and don't quite understand, the technology of the products we got for home Wi-Fi, so they're kind of scared to, pick this stuff up for a client. And I'm like, come on, dude, this is fine, dude. We got a guy that still likes to come in and buy those Netgear Nighthawk X6 Wi-Fi routers, for his customers, to set up in their house. And I'm thinking, dude, get you a freaking Orbi RBK50, dude. It's a better solution. Or get you this 3-pack of Linksys Velop. I mean, gosh. Even Google Wi-Fi, it's not a heavy lifter. It's not a really high-performance item, but even that's going to solve a lot of stuff, And so anyway, now you see this, I had lights going on and stuff like that. I'm going to do an onboard diagnostic again, since this light's been blinking. I want to see what more engine codes show up, but, this thing's, it's been running since about 6:11 p.m. So it's been running for, at least a good hour and a half, and it's nighttime now. It was still daylight whenever I started up this thing. And, we'll see if we can get it to go again. So it's running decently well. I'm going to run the engine up to about 2,000 RPM. Which it runs pretty smooth at. Alright. Just let it do that. This is all running completely normal. And I'm going to just let off the gas pedal. Like I'm coming to a stop. See, okay, it's normal. 1,000 RPM, that's about normal. So it goes down about 800. That's pretty much what it's supposed to do. So it's not doing that blinking. And now it's running rough again. Now it's starting to run a little bit rough. I don't know if it's a mass airflow sensor or, what's the other one? There's mass airflow and then there's idle air controller, whatever. It might need that kind of stuff replaced. It's had a few little problems, but me and my family has actually done a better job diagnosing what's wrong with this vehicle than the car dealership who manufactured this vehicle. Can you believe that? Three people, in a family. One of them tinkers around with cars a little bit. I mean, I don't, but I did work at an auto parts store, and another family member. 3 of us just kind of research stuff, and we find out more on how to accurately fix what's wrong with this 2003 Ford Escape XLT than what the Ford dealership does, right? We're more accurate than the dealership who manufactured the vehicle, or the dealership of who manufactured the vehicle. Isn't that sad when a customer knows more about how to fix their vehicle than the dealership whose company manufactured your vehicle does? It's pathetic.